Hello, my loves. Welcome to Be for Vibrant. My name is Kellyanne, and here is our collectivist compassion for this moon cycle, for this moment in time. If you are watching this in the distant future, then what you are going to find is that this is the exact right time for you to be hearing this. But if you're watching this around January 11th, 2026, then we are aligning with a Libra quarter moon. Um, this Libra moon is helping us to not only tap off the edge of the scales and get rid of the excess that keeps us from being able to keep a balanced delineation between ourselves and our cultivation of self in relation to other people, and I'll get into that. But it's also setting us up for recalibration so that we can begin to practice love uh, in real time, as in love not just being a theory for how we live, but love as praxis. So, what I mean by this is love can sometimes take on this sense of community and friendship and um, togetherness, partnership, which makes us feel like we need to be a certain way in order to achieve it. Now, some of those certain ways are actually beneficial and are helpful, like a certain way that you would need to show up in relationship and in partnership with other people in order to embody love is to be honest and respectful and kind. But sometimes we confuse honesty with others for honesty that has come through the self. As in, I am only honest with others to the capacity that I think that they're capable of. And so I'm going to avoid some of the truths that I believe affect me within this relationship. Hiding truth from yourself because the practice of love, the theory of love that we have, means that in practice, sometimes we withhold information from other people, and sometimes we try to protect other people from our truths, and so we avoid the mirror. And our relationships are the mirror. So if we avoid the mirror of being honest with ourselves, then we are also avoiding right relationship and love as praxis. Love not just in theory, as in treat others how you want to be treated, but actually being truthful with yourself. Like, how do I actually want to be treated? Because maybe the assumption that I'm making is that other people want certain truths withheld if it seems like a you problem and not a me problem, because that's how I want to be treated. Maybe the assumption that I'm making is based on something that I'm not being honest with myself about. Maybe I think that I want people to be honest with me. Maybe I think that I want other people to trust me enough that they can be totally vulnerable, take the risk of having unnecessary conflict in order to develop a deeper level of intimacy that we couldn't have achieved otherwise. you know, love as theory means that you think being kind to others shows up as politeness and niceness. And I've talked about this in many videos in the past, which is that the politics of politeness makes us really dishonest people and is actually kind of mean, you know? It's the same as believing that the the kind thing, which is telling people that they have spinach in their teeth, is separate from the is kind thing the kind thing is the mean thing and the wrong thing when it's telling somebody that they have spinach in their teeth, when it's telling somebody that you need more distance from them than you're actually getting, or that you don't really want to engage in a certain part of the relationship anymore. There's a kindness to being honest and taking the risk of there being hurt feelings, but but it sounds mean. Kindness is a hurtful truth sometimes, but it's kind because what we're really doing is proving our trust with other people, proving that the risks that we take shows how vulnerable we're willing to be and how vulnerable we're willing to allow other people to be, and create a safety and security net for other people to be within those relationships with us. Politeness is mean. Politeness is the actual meanie hood, meanie pants society, because the it's a political response to the sort of like, in the outward world, there's propaganda which tries to convince us that the world is a certain way, that reality exists in a certain way. And some of that propaganda is generated by truth and by people being honest. I'm trying to convince you that in Palestine there is a genocide. That is propaganda, but it's grounded in truth. Some propaganda is based on the kernel of a truth, like Jewish people face anti Semitism, but it is encapsulated by lies that there needs to be an ethnocentric state in order to protect Jewish people. Because the political politeness around not touching something because you're afraid that it's going to be mean to say that's actually not true. What we're doing is we're protecting the lie. We're protecting the propaganda by being polite. And that exists not only systemically and in the sort of like world external of our individual relationships, but it also reflects itself and ripples into those individual one-on-one relationships and into our communities and friend groups, in which we believe that protecting the lie because there is a kernel of truth is more kind and more nice. It's being nice instead of love, capital L, as praxis. Actually putting into material, actionable practice that the truths we collectively acknowledge are important to sustain in order that kindness can be practiced, not a theory. That respect can be practiced, not a theory. We need to be able to sustain these truths together. And so this is why I say that we need to tap off the excess that's weighing down the scales that make us act a certain way. Sometimes there's in our relationships and in our like concept of community, we have an excess of beliefs that aren't actually grounded in love as praxis. They're grounded in love as theory. And we neglect to really pay attention to those beliefs, which, in some ways shelters us from the risk taking, which is creating instability in those relationships and in those communities and in those friend groups. So when we're trying to achieve love as praxis, which is a sanctuary for honesty and vulnerability, intimacy, transparency, compassion, the sanctuary that we try to achieve in lieu of honesty, transparency, compassion is a really like hobbled together shelter. It's it's not going to withstand the storm. It's not going to withstand the weight of all of the excess beliefs that are weighing down the roof of that shelter and ready for any little knock on the walls, any little knock on the door, any little taps on the window to make the whole thing collapse. So anytime somebody within that community in which safety is just politically correct politeness and respect by virtue of assumption of what other people actually need in order to like truly feel the sanctuary of relational love. What we do when we carry around all of these beliefs and when we don't address them is we're building a house of cards around community and around our relationships. And as soon as somebody tries to renegotiate so that there is a more stable kind of safety, everybody inside feels unsafe. Everybody inside feels the collapse and needs to rebalance, needs to like recalibrate in order to adjust what it means to build something together, which is love as praxis, building something together that is sustainably harmonious, not just polite all the time and nice all the time, but truly kind by virtue of being sometimes so directly honest that it shakes the walls, that it blows out the windows, the glass in the windows. It can be really destabilizing. And that's why Libra, which is an astrological sign represented by scales, the scales of justice, but is centered on love and is ruled by Venus, which is all about relationships and relational love. At this time and through this sort of channeling that you're tapping into right now, it's time for us to remove those excess beliefs and maybe even uh, create new boundaries within relationships that had been structured, had the structures of like a lack of boundary and a lack of kindness, like true, honest kindness, a lack of respect for self, which ripples into respect for others. It's time to remove those excess relationships which don't look or feel like sanctuary, and to also recalibrate in those relationships which you believe could feel that way, which you believe there has been enough trust built, there has been enough mutual respect built, uh, through which you can rebuild, through which love can stop being a theoretical idealism, and love can actually, capital L, be the praxis by which you recenter your life. Because our relationships are not nothing. Our relationships are kind of fucking everything. At least that's the point of view that I come from, with by channeling for the collective compassion, which is a witnessing of suffering, and the benevolent desire to alleviate suffering and remove that suffering. What I channel is so much relational, intra and interpersonal, meaning inner work and outer work, in outer relationships and our relationships with ourselves and our self identities and the identities that we wear when we are in relationship with other people. A lot of what I channel and what this channel is about for me is creating pockets of time, moments within time, harnessing, some of the astrological movements, but also like harnessing the moments when you're ready. Like I said, you might not be watching this January 11th when it's like astrologically relevant, but it all comes back around to the rebuilding and reconstructing of our relationships with self and others, so that the the harm that we do can be forgiven, so that we're not perpetuating the ongoing carceral suffering which our white supremacist, colonialist, patriarchal system wants us to perpetuate with each other. And by that I mean, the recalibration that many of us need to do, and I'm especially talking to my white friends here, is we need to address the carceral nature of our relationships, in which we think that the politics of politeness is the right way to go, but it also means that there is a punishing factor when we encounter a propaganda within our relationships, meaning there's a kernel of truth, but it's covered in lies and it's covered in maybe half truths or incomplete resonance with that truth. And so there are a lot of misaligned beliefs that creep in there and start to affect things. We need to address the punishing nature by which we handle the conflict that arises when those beliefs affect our relationships with other people, and we start to recognize that, like, maybe this is a them problem, maybe this is a me problem, but absolutely it could become, and in a communal way sense instead of a carceral sense, it should be. I should endeavor to always make the conflict in my relationships a an us versus the problem type of conflict. The confrontation of the punishing nature with which we treat our loved ones means that love continues to be a theory, because we don't recalibrate when we go through conflict for not punishing other people and essentially sentencing them to isolation, or uh, rejecting their theories of life, being able to amicably disagree. We we approach that sort of perspective on relationships as a threat to the relationship, instead of opportunities for us to commune with overlapping realities. And so love continues to be a theory. If you really loved me, then you wouldn't disagree with my way of life, or my way, or my beliefs. You wouldn't essentially put me in a position to take it personally or feel hurt by your point of view. And so, love as a theory of how people should treat you becomes a calibration toward the carceral nature of the systems that we were conditioned to believe in. We believe that cutting people off is the right thing to do, essentially putting them in jail before we've given them a chance to be on trial and speak for themselves. We avoid having conversations with our closest loved ones. We tend to skip past the curiosity part and go straight to the sentencing. I don't want you around me because you've hurt me, as opposed to, I'm really curious about what it was that caused you to hurt me, because I know you, I love you, I respect you. And the polite thing here is to believe the propaganda, which is that you and I can't coexist when we have different ways of seeing things. But the kind thing to do is recognize that compassion goes both ways. Recognize that if I'm hurting, then maybe you're hurting too. The whole hurt people thing, that's also like a call to action within relationships in which we experience hurt and harm. Now, that's not to say that in relationships in which you experience like perpetual hurt and harm, as in like a pattern of this person has not found a way to respect me. This person has not found a way to convey things to me which I can take as kindness. This person has not found a way to accept that when I have things to share, it's not about them, it's about me. This person has not found a way to address the confrontation of our differences and the need for renavigating our boundaries together with curiosity. They haven't found a way to do that. In those relationships, when that's the pattern, when that's like, you know, beyond the first strike, beyond the second strike, beyond the third strike, when you're at that point where it's like there's too much evidence to the contrary of us being able to commune in the praxis of capital L love, then that's not the kind of relationship that I'm talking about here. I'm talking about the relationships with loved ones in which you've built trust. I framed it up top. In the relationships in which you've built trust, you should be able to notice that the immediate response you have, and again, I'm like gonna pull white folks specifically into this conversation. I'm not trying to call you out. I'm not trying to make you feel like you're in trouble. You're not in trouble. I'm not trying to make you feel like you're the bad guy or the villain. You're not. I'm not trying to renegotiate with you whatever makes you feel wounded or whatever patterns you experience that create a sense of victimhood over and over again. Like my victimhood lives in how I've felt misunderstood my whole life. And I'm not a victim of other people misunderstanding me, but I have self-pitied in such a way that I have made it other people's problem when they do misunderstand me. And I have made it like an obsession that needs to be confronted, that you misunderstand me. And now I don't believe that you love me, because love in my own theory is complete and total understanding. When in reality, love as a praxis is letting go of misunderstandings, because we all think differently, we all feel differently, we all get a different sense for how reality takes shape, and being able to acknowledge that is the love. Being able to accept that and let go and allow understanding to be something that unfolds. For instance, just talking about my experience here, letting understanding be something that unfolds over time, as opposed to happens all at once. That is love as praxis. So I want to call in my white folks who might feel like, owie, I might have done this. I might have been a perpetrator of this kind of relationship. I want to call you in and hold your hand, and just say, there is a recalibration away from the carceral and criminal justice system, which is reflected in the justice we seek within our relationships for the harm that we perceive has been done to us. Because I tell you what, it does not welcome certain people into your world if you act just like the police in your relationships. If you act just like senators in your relationship, you put up like a really good front as far as like theory, and as far as like the things that you want to achieve in your you know your bid for a relationship, your bid for stewardship of a relationship. You can talk the talk, but love as praxis means walking the walk through the discomfort of you being uncomfortable and you making other people feel uncomfortable on purpose, because you know and you trust that they have the capacity to be uncomfortable. Some people will interpret that as hurt. Some people will interpret that as hurt and harm. Being uncomfortable is not hurt and it's not harm. Some people are going to interpret it as such. And I'm telling you this now because you are going to be one of those people. You are going to interpret the discomfort that you feel about sharing things with other people and people sharing things with you. You are going to interpret the discomfort of holding that and receiving that or needing to share that as hurt and harm, which might make you shut down before you've even had a chance to share it with other people and make other people feel uncomfortable. And hi, Dolly. Might make you shut down before you've even had a chance to share it with other people, and might make you feel like you need to shut other people down, or shut an entire relationship down, or shut an entire friend group down, or shut an entire community down because you feel uncomfortable. And discomfort is love as praxis. The recalibration that we need to make is toward discomfort being incorporated into the praxis of love. Hey, sweet girl. Pets, pets, pets. Blem, blem, blem. Blip, 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 blip. Being uncomfortable is not the worst thing that could happen to you. In fact, it's where growth happens. It's the only way by which growth happens. Can you down? Not quite. Somewhat trained. my judgment, my judgment as a partner of a dog trainer going, down sometimes. Uh, yeah. Being uncomfortable is like I'm trying to bring it back to the sanctuary part of love as praxis, because being uncomfortable is something that we like seek relationships for. Except the sort of messy, leaky part, like the loose shelter part, comes in when we're only willing to be uncomfortable with the people we're not in conflict with. Like, we're not willing to embody sanctuary. Like, you're allowed to have made mistakes here, and I will still love you, and I will still hold you, and I will still support you, and I will still honor your full humanity, your full personhood, the wholeness of your flaws and your, um, uh, you know, strength dynamics. Okay, no, thank you. Yeah, okay, good down. Oh, she's like, I finally did it. Why won't you give it to me now? I don't want your breath in my face either. No, thank you. The sort of like loosely cobbled together shelter that we create through love as theory makes us believe the false belief. And this is, the excess belief, the one of the things that we really need to shed at this time that you're receiving this, is the false belief that love as praxis means we're never hurt, and there's never the feeling of risk that one might be harmed. That is the discomfort. That's what the discomfort is. And building, a relational shelter on the belief that you must never harm me and you must never hurt me in order for me to feel totally safe in this relationship means the relationship is built on, it's a straw house. The real brick and mortar, the real concrete, is accepting the reality that I will always be uncomfortable because growth and change are uncomfortable processes. And if I am to retreat into the sanctuary of my relationships whenever I'm going through a growth or a change that involves me and involves other people, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to acknowledge the discomfort and acknowledge where harm may happen, while also embracing that kindness is a value only embodied, fully embodied, through relational honesty and relational transparency. It's difficult to navigate. It's difficult to navigate the conflict of confrontation when all we really want to do is get along with our people. We want to feel good with our people. We want our people to feel good because of us. And if I like pull in that sort of acknowledgement that people pleasing is a false virtue, meaning, we want other people to feel good because of us, as in, like, we'll do anything to avoid making other people feel bad or uncomfortable because of us, or uncomfortable around us because we're being kind and respectful and aligning with our own inner truth, which must be reflected and inevitably, undeniably ripples into our external world. We want to be able to make other people feel good in relationship with us, and yet that's how you practice the politics of politeness. You put on a mask. You become a politician. You campaign for compassion, but when you're in office, you don't actually do it. That's not the actual change that you confront. The actual change that you confront might be completely avoided. You might be evasive as hell when it comes to the change which compassion requires, because then you're taking really risky action. The witnessing of suffering and the desire to alleviate that suffering, the desire to do something about it, means that you're doing something about it, and also that you're witnessing suffering all the time. The risk here is that you're exhausted and that you burn out and you are unboundaried. The risk is that you take action all the time and it perpetuates a Munchausen by proxy, in which you rely on other people relying on you. You need other people to be suffering in order to feel needed in your relationships, in order to feel worthy of relationships, because you're always helping other people solve problems. But life isn't a problem to be solved, and neither are relationships. The relationship isn't the problem. They are not the problem. You are not the problem. The problem is the problem. The problem of being uncomfortable with the change that needs to happen in order to continue being in community with people while also communing with your most honest self. It's a layered experience. It's an unveiling. It's a constant shedding and pulling back. And when you feel yourself shedding and you feel yourself rubbing against the hard things, then you are the snake that has already outgrown the skin. You've already outgrown, and you are already in the process of growing and taking up more space that is authentic to you when you are rubbing up against the hard things. That's how snakes shed their skin. Face first, they rub on rocks and trees so that they can break through the outer layers of that skin and begin to wriggle out of it. And it's an uncomfortable process. But the shedding of skin and that transformational process, that transformational component of the process of growth, it also relieves the snake of parasites. So you're going to see that people The other excess that we're removing from our scales here are the people who aren't trying to have kind, respectful, compassionate relationships with you. You are trying to do the thing, and they are not. They're just trying to suck your good energy. They're just trying to only celebrate you when you are being clean. When you are being clean and precise and put together. They are not trying to create sanctuary for the times when you really need it, which is when you're vulnerable and you can't see because the skin that's shedding makes your eyes go milky white and you need to protect yourself. But you don't need to protect yourself from the people who really embrace and love and accept you. But there are going to be people who love you in theory and talk the talk, but don't walk the walk. Don't actually practice love, capital L. The carceral criminal justice systems, which have rippled into our relationships, make us feel like we need to punish those parasites as well. But I would also make a bid in this channeling here for compassionate release by way of acknowledging that like they're rooting for your suffering because they suffer too. But the action that you need to take in order to alleviate the perpetuation of that suffering is not to relieve them of their suffering if they're rooting for your suffering. If they're rooting for your healing and they've been supportive and they've been a part of that journey and that's the pattern of that relationship, then compassion can go both ways. But compassion needs to be for the self. Compassion needs to be witnessing your own suffering and doing something the fuck about it if the shedding that you're going through and the shedding that you experience by outgrowing those limiting beliefs about the discomfort you feel in relationships and what they actually mean, being able to discern between discomfort that is perpetual suffering celebrated by certain people and the discomfort that is change and growth within relationships that you and the other person or you and the community that you're in have built capacity for. That's where compassion lives. Self-compassion is for you. When you're like, this is actually parasitic. I can't move forward with this person or with these people. The ripples of our carceral systems are going to have you believing that you should punish them or that your leaving their life would be the ultimate punishment. And my bid here is to not petition for any kind of punishment at all. Not attempt to make other people feel bad for the suffering that they're already experiencing and the suffering that they've put you through. Because push come to shove, the only thing that them feeling more bad about it, if they don't already, more bad about it, if they don't already feel bad about how bad they've been making you feel, the only thing that could be achieved by you making the punishment worse or trying to, endeavoring to, for people who already don't really give a fuck about your opinion, so long as you are, I don't know, catering to theirs. The only thing that you could hope to achieve is perpetuating the carceral systems that you've been conditioned to believe are how we must rule ourselves, how we must govern ourselves. Just because you've been harmed doesn't mean that you have to perpetuate that harm. Just because other people love that harm for you doesn't mean that you have to love it for them. That you have to it's the right thing to do to wish harm upon them or to curse them upon your exit from their life. Because I guarantee you the whole like they're gonna miss me when I'm gone thing and they're gonna want me back thing, that's a few and far between. That's a rarity. That the people who have already been treating you as such are going to feel that way genuinely and come back to you in such a way that they're ready to change and transform with you. That they're ready to rub up against the hard things and go blind with the amount of vulnerability that they're facing. So much so that they retreat into the sanctuary of your relationship that you've built together. And the honesty that's there shakes the windows, shakes the walls without breaking them. It's a rarity. So don't shoot for that. Don't wish for that. Don't focus on that. Recalibrate toward removing what's the excess on your scales that tip you toward like trying to please others or trying to make other people see your way or trying to ultimately grow through aligned beliefs and totally aligned agreements about how the world should work. And once you let those go, then what you can do is be on the same level with the things that are equal to you and equal to where you are meeting yourself. Because you can only meet your relationships as deeply as you are meeting yourself. When you let go of that excess, you recalibrate toward that sanctuary. You recalibrate toward love as praxis. And that's where the good shit happens. That's where the truly aligned shit happens. Not the space in which everybody's happy all the time and everybody feels good all the time, but the space in which kindness is real and not a political propaganda spin on what the truth is. Kindness is real. Respect is mutual. Compassion is mutual. Trust is earned through honesty with the self and the sharing of that with others, despite the discomfort that it inevitably will cause. It's going to happen. You're going to hurt in your closest relationships. You're going to continue to feel uncomfortable in the relationships and the communities in which you have already built so much trust that you think we could do anything. Yeah, you can. You could do anything, including face the storms that are already billowing under the roof of that shelter. Let it blow out the roof so you can rebuild. And so that sanctuary is the brick and mortar of your relational love that are the actions and behaviors by which you identify with that love. That you really embody, not by virtue of trying to feel good all the time. I think our relationships should make us feel good most of the time. And also, I have come to feel better and feel gooder about relationships in which curiosity during conflict is a practice. That's love as praxis for me. When somebody's curious about the harm and the hurt that they're seeing and that they're experiencing in the relationship, the discomfort that they're experiencing in relationship with me, the disagreement that they're experiencing in relationship with me. Love as praxis is curiosity and conflict, not carceral punishment, not isolationism, not individualistic bootstrapping, not cutting off or going no contact or canceling somebody, because that is carceral. That's the criminal justice, that's a criminal injustice system that oppresses us from inside our relationships with each other and makes us perpetuate the state's harm against us, against each other. Then we become the bad guys. We become the fascism that we're fighting by being in right relationship with one another and building community, which socializes us toward compassion and kindness and respect as a practice, not toward kicking people out at the first sign of danger. People need to be able to take risks and be messy. Get messy. Take chances. Make mistakes. That's the most frizzle of it all. That's how we experiment with a new way, a new reform of the old ways, which our nervous system like inherently knows, inherently understands that this is how we're supposed to relate with each other. It's a return. It's a remembering. When we come back to that love as praxis, which allows us to be messy and be raw. That's the actual vulnerability component of love as praxis. Because you can't witness my suffering if I'm not being vulnerable and raw and messy enough for you to see how bad the suffering is. And if you're not curious about it, and my suffering is rippling into our relationship, and you don't ripple back a curiosity, I'm not going to reveal things to you. I can't. There's no space. There hasn't been created a space for it. We need to create that spaciousness for each other, not just create space as distance from each other. That's what I mean by I'm not trying to call you out, I'm trying to call you in. I'm trying to hold space for how we're not bad people for the ways that we've shown up badly in the past. But now that you know better, practice doing better. And that doesn't mean trying as in I'm going to think about it and think about it. That means practicing, failing, learning the technique of doing better by doing, by putting into action the messy, sloppy way that we actually show up as whole and complete people. Actually be sloppy. Actually be messy. Actually let a nip slip. Actually, actually do it. Because that's the only way by which you are going to learn the techniques for doing it right. And if your perfectionism gets in the way, that is carceral too. That's a response to not being able to make mistakes, because making mistakes hurts people and leads to punishment, leads to negative consequences. The consequences of making mistakes through perfectionism recovery and people-pleasing recovery is allowing other people to be sloppy and being sloppy, taking the risk of being sloppy in relationships in which you've built some level of security and some level of trust. I think that's where the channeling ends. I feel complete. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. I would love to hear some of the but wait, Kellyanne, anything that feels like a pushing up against this message. I would love to hear about it. Anything that feels like a celebration of this message and like an affirmation or the confirmation that this is a message that you needed to hear. I would love to hear about it. I love you so much. You're deserving of all the love you desire. There are so many resources in the caption below that also are love as praxis. So go and check them out. And I hope you have a beautiful, wonderful rest of your day. See you, babies.